Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. Today I commence my next 500 vlog journey, having completed 1,500 and reaching a new milestone. I now set myself another milestone to get to 2,000 vlogs in English, and I'm down here at Cockle Bay, which is part of Darling Harbour. It's the southernmost area of Darling Harbour, and I'm at an area here, at a place where we have a number of statues. It's an artistic installation known as the Brolga dance, or the dance of the Brolgas. Brolgas are birds here in Australia from the crane family, and they do have a particular special way of expressing themselves, I guess, during their mating season. And this installation, which has been here since 1998, captures those movements quite beautifully. This whole area here, this building, it's only been here for 25 years now, is earmarked for redevelopment by Multiplex. So we'll wait and see what happens to these Brolgas, but these Brolgas have played an important part from an artistic perspective at bringing some atmosphere and bringing a spirit, an animal spirit, an artistic, a structural spirit to this particular area. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll continue along my normal path of delivering yet another book summary. So what I'm doing at the moment, just for your information, is I'm developing an internet, a website channel where I can take all of the material that I've accumulated, the 1,500 vlogs, and catalogue them and present them in an orderly fashion so that people can click through them and listen to whichever book summary they feel appropriate at a particular point in time, so I can reach more people if it is indeed possible. So today's book summary that we're going to go through is a book entitled Mind Over Clutter by a female author known as Nicola Lewis. And this book, like many of the books of this genre, talk about clutter and how clutter creates stress, and stress impacts our health, our lifestyle, as well as the lifestyle of those others around us. So this book will go through and identify the different elements of clutter and remind us from a scientific perspective how these things, how this clutter impacts us in a negative way, and give us a few points in terms of how to solve the clutter issue in our busy, complex lives, I guess, is one way of describing it. So the author here talks about the importance of making incremental changes, of identifying whether or not you've got an issue with clutter, and the things that one needs to do, the effective things that one needs to do to solve that particular problem. And the call to action, the early call to action, is that what we should be striving for is to be better today than what we were yesterday. Make today better. Don't worry about what happened yesterday, and don't worry what's going to happen tomorrow, because at the end of the day, all we really have is the here and now. The past is gone, can't change that, can't do anything about it. The future is unknown. We don't know what God's plan is for tomorrow, the day after, and whether or not we'll be around tomorrow and the day after. So all we really have is the gift of the present, the gift of the here and now, and what we do today, what we do in this present moment is going to shape our tomorrows, is one way of putting it. So the author makes it very, very clear that from a scientific perspective, clutter leads to stress, both conscious and subconscious. We've got to understand that we have two aspects to our being. Our brain has a conscious component, which is very, very small and minuscule in comparison to the subconscious component, which we don't normally access all that readily, but it is definitely there, and it is definitely shaping our feelings, the chemistry of our bodies, the physiological aspects of our personhood, and the things that are happening below the surface will bubble up and create issues if they are unresolved. So this book here looks at addressing stress, clutter at both the conscious level as well as the subconscious level, in order to provide a holistic solution to those who are looking to make improvements in their lives. So on the topic of stress, the author here details that stress is a killer. Stress can make you ill. Stress can get you down, can make you feel depressed, can make you feel anxious. If you're worrying too much about your past, then chances are you're going to be stressed in a depressed state. Or if you're worrying too much about your future, then you're going to be stressed from an anxiety perspective. But either way, this stress, this negative stress, creates chemicals in your body, and too much of these chemicals, which happen too frequently, which are secreted too frequently into your blood system, can have a negative impact on your health. So with stress, your cortisol levels, which are cortisol is a chemical associated with adrenaline, the chemical that we need in order to become alert, in order to jump into action, in order to kick into fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's that chemical that we need, but we don't need it all the time. We need it occasionally in times of emergency. And the interesting thing to note here is that we live in a different world today to what our ancestors lived in thousands of years ago. We don't have the risk of being chased and eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. We don't have the risk of being attacked by our neighbour and our family and children, our wives, taken away from us. We live in a civilized world. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's nowhere near as dangerous. It's nowhere near as vicious as what societies, what our environments would have been in years ago. So what I'm trying to get to now is that the need for cortisol isn't quite as important for our survival as what it once was. But with excess cortisol being secreted into your body on a regular basis, what it does is it corrodes our nervous system, it corrodes our bodies, it causes damage to our key functioning organs, and it can lead to mental illness because the higher or the more clutter we have in our lives, the more cortisol tends to be secreted. And with that extra cortisol, because of the clutter, you can cause yourself harm, and you don't really know that you're causing yourself harm, but it is real, it is there, and it can be measured by scientists. So what the author suggests here is that we need to start, and we need to start right away, but we need to start small in order to build momentum so that we can beat it one day. The key issue that we all face in this modern world, in this world where we've all become consummate consumerists, is that we have far too many possessions in our lives, and over a lifetime these many possessions create stress at both the conscious and subconscious level. I remember reading recently that the average person can have up to 300,000 possessions at any one particular time, and having too many possessions causes problems, because with those possessions comes a responsibility and accountability to maintain them, to house them, to order them, to look after them, and to use them in different ways. And if you don't maintain those possessions, if you don't look after those possessions, then what will happen is those possessions will end up becoming a burden, a physical and a mental burden to you and your family. So one of the tricks that this author talks about here is eliminating the unneeded, unwanted, unloved possessions that we have in our lives. At the end of the day, everything has a use-by date, and you can't buy happiness, and you can't bank on happiness either. Just because something gave you happiness years ago in your childhood doesn't mean that that thing, that piece of metal or that object will continue to serve you and give you happiness. So we need to learn to let go. We need to build the courage to let go of those excess possessions, because the fewer things that we have, then the fewer things that we have that will possess us and take over, I guess, our conscious and subconscious worlds. Researchers are able to show us that people with cluttered homes have higher levels of cortisol secreted into their bloodstreams. And as I alluded to earlier, the more cortisol you have in your bloodstream, the increased risk of anxiety and depression that you face. It also makes you less productive and harms your ability to concentrate because we're ruminating. We've got all of these unfinished projects sitting in our conscious and subconscious minds, bugging us, eating at us, ruminating over and over again, telling us the story, look after me, look after me. Very similar to the sirens that were calling Ulysses, Odysseus, all that many years ago in those Greek myths. So what we're saying here is that the more possessions you have, the more voices that you're going to have in your life, even though they're muted. Those voices will be calling you for attention. Look after me, use me, why me? And these voices are going to weigh on our soul and weigh on our spirits. So that's why the author says that we need to take charge. We need to take control where possible in order to relieve ourselves of the burden, relieve ourselves of the backpack of problems and challenges that these possessions will most certainly bring and weigh us down throughout our lives. The author says here that we need to start the day by making a bet that we're going to live a better day and we're going to make the most of each and every opportunity. So we've got to start small, and the author here says that the best way to start your day is to get up in the morning, say your morning prayers, and make your bed. Make your bed. Because by doing these little incremental things, it's going to give you momentum to be able to do other things throughout the day. It's best to start the day on a positive note by making your bed, saying your prayers, reading a book summary, reading scriptures, and having a little routine that gets us in the mood and starts building our momentum of consistent yet little wins. And when we go to our house, where we can go from room to room, identify where the challenges are, identify where the clutter is, but the author says start one cupboard at a time, open one door at a time, and do something there to tidy up, to remove things which are no longer useful, and to set some order in those little areas of your life. Because we need small, consistent wins, because these small, consistent wins are the ones which add to the product of what we've got and help us get to the bigger wins in our lives. Because at the end of the day, the bigger wins are just a product of a lot of small wins. So one cupboard at a time, and small steps over time make a huge difference. Not only a huge physical difference to the things that we change, but also removes weight from our shoulders at a small incremental way. So the second key point that comes from this author is where they say to get rid of the stressful junk, we need to follow 4 simple steps, starting with removing everything from one room, or everything from one cupboard, or everything from one particular area. So you need to start with a clean slate. And this commencement. So the 4 steps that the author talks about is to take everything out of a room, of a cupboard, except the furniture. Then to sift through everything and make 4 piles. And each pile will be either you keep, you sell, you trash, or you donate. keeping only the things that you will use within the next month or two. We need to clean the entire room, dust it, and get rid of all the cobwebs and everything that makes it look and feel and smell old, and put only the things you will keep into your room and organise it in a way that will allow you to identify what is where, so that you can use them and find them when you need them most. We need to remember that having a cluttered bedroom makes it hard to sleep well. It makes it hard to live well. So the first thing we should be doing is ensuring that our bedrooms are clutter-free and to make them a sleep sanctuary. The last point that the author makes is about chemicals and the fact that these chemicals and disinfectants can be bad for our health. So her call to action is to use the more natural ones where possible, because at the end of the day we could be living in a toxic and polluted environment that is more polluted inside than what it is outside, and polluted by us, not other people. The author then talks about using lemons as antibacterials, vinegar as an antibacterial, combining baking soda and lemon as a cleaning product, and using these natural substances to enhance our health, to clean our homes, and to make our home the wonderful living sanctuary that we're all entitled to. I remember saying years ago that there is no difference between a house in the western suburbs and a house on the harbour, because at the end of the day, most people here in Australia, most people here in Sydney, only live inside their house, inside the walls of their house, and they usually never get to go outside, they never get to enjoy the outside, and they never get to enjoy the views. So each person's house is a sanctuary, and your house can be the best home in the world if you want it to be. All it requires is just a little bit of love and attention and cleanliness, and to turn it into the wonderful place that you have. I'm looking over there at the Crown Casino, where there are multi-million-dollar apartments on those upper floors, and I always think, are they happy? Not every home, not every house is a home. Not every house is a sanctuary, because it's not where you live, it's how you live and who you live with that adds quality to a person's life. Children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, family, friends, all of these components add value, add colour, add shape, add love to our environments. So what we should be doing, according to this author, is cherishing our homes and making them the palace, our castle, and making the most of them throughout our lives. Anyway, take care everybody, wishing you all the best. I hope there are a few things here that we can learn and use. I can most certainly use most of this, given that my garage is cluttered and there are so many things that I can throw out and get rid of that I haven't used in decades, and yet I keep just in case I may need them one day. and that day, of course, will never come. So I plan from today to attack one cupboard at a time and make those incremental changes that are going to have massive changes in my life, and to free myself of the burden of possessions and nostalgia. Take care, Yasas, and we'll chat again. Bye for now.